All right, everybody, we're joined by Joe Scalia. In years past, we would be standing next to each other at Bill's training camp. Now we are talking via Zoom. Joe, I miss being out on a football field. I do not miss sweating out on the football field. As we get ready for camp here, even though we can't be on the field, big storylines. What are the first things that come to mind for you?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's who's going to be there first and foremost. I think that's kind of the topic du jour right now because we've seen at least at this point a handful of New England Patriots players opt out. We've seen already one Bills player opt out. So all of these different layers to it, and then you put the testing on top of it. So who's going to be available for the teams, and specifically for the Bills, how it's going to impact their chances this year, because the one player that they have lost already, Star Lotulelei, is someone that they depended on in early run stuffing downs, and he's someone that was a piece to the puzzle this year. And so how many more of those might they have to lose? How much will it impact their chances and everything along those lines? But just from an on the field perspective, from a seasonal perspective, how is it going to look this training camp? I think that's what I want to know. I mean, will the players go full bore during practices, during padded practices? How rusty will they be? All of these different elements, and will these younger guys who sometimes have a chance to make the roster, will they be able to make the team this season? So a lot of different elements heading into probably the most unique training camp we'll ever see.
We find out the news today. It looks like, according to Mike Garafalo, Star Lotulelei will be sitting out for this season. In your estimation, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst, how big of a loss is this for the Bills?
I would say it's a 5, just because they really like him as a run defender. And I know a lot of people are high on Harrison Phillips based on his performances in the first few games from last season. And absolutely, he played very well for them. But it wasn't a bit of a different role. He wasn't exactly the run stuffer that Lotulelei provides them. What they love about Lotulelei is that he does all the dirty work. You hear them say it all the time, but it's absolutely true when you watch it on film. You see him occupy 1 to 2 blockers to free up the linebackers in space behind him so they can make tackles and kind of wiggle through the defensive line and stop the running back before he gets a full head of steam. He even makes a stop or two himself, even though that's not as frequent, but he's just a solid team player, and that's why they like him. That's why they keep him around, even though some Bills fans are like, he doesn't do anything, but he actually does. He does a lot for the team and is one of their best run defenders. However, Harrison Phillips is someone that looks like will be stepping into a bigger role because of this, because he was his immediate backup. So now we'll have to see how well he can come back from that torn ACL, and if he can put together a full season. Because let's not forget, his rookie season, he had a pretty strong start, but then hit the rookie wall and just fell off. His second season, had the first 3 games, looked really good, but that was before that wall zone kind of came into play here. So now it's just a matter of him proving to the Bills that he is worthy of those first team reps, and if he isn't, then they're going to have to figure something out.
If it's not him, and we don't know this for sure yet, but if Harrison Phillips can't handle that workload, does that mean that it then becomes Vernon Butler's job, or then they move in like Quentin Jefferson inside or Epinesa inside? Like, what is what would kind of like the order be here for the depth chart?
Yeah, so I think Vernon Butler would chip in at one technique because it is more of a run stuffing role, and I don't really love him as a pass rushing defensive tackle. Just based on what I saw from the Carolina film last year, but he's still someone that is an effective player that can get through the line. So that's probably his lean to where he plays. But since Lotulelei won't be with the Bills this season, then I think that probably means Butler splits some reps at one technique with Harrison Phillips. Maybe even Butler starts alongside Ed Oliver, and if Phillips' knee doesn't allow him to do all those things. So that could do it. Quentin Jefferson has always been a hybrid 3-technique defensive tackle to defensive end role. That was kind of his job in Seattle last season. Not much of a 1-technique guy, so he wouldn't be filling that role. The other guy to maybe keep an eye on here is Vincent Taylor, who was a bit of an afterthought last year, was on the active roster for a cup of coffee, then got moved back down to the practice squad. He's someone that that has shown some flashes and can play a little bit of both spots, but they prefer him to be in that one technique role. So if they were to want four, for sure, defensive tackles on their roster, he would be the recipient of that. The other guy to keep an eye on is that could potentially benefit here, Daryl Johnson, who was probably on the outside looking in before all this. And so because they have the flexibility with Jefferson that he can flip inside, that would open up another spot on the defensive line in total. And Johnson would probably be the biggest recipient of that.
Who could forget Bam Johnson?
They really like him. They would be scared to put him on waivers too.
Last question for you, and I've known you long enough to know that, I'm not going to ask you to predict the season now because I know you won't answer that. But when you see all of the Patriots players opting out that did today, does it feel like the division is even more for the taking now than it was maybe even at this time yesterday?
A little bit, yeah. Mostly because they lost a few defensive players, or at least a couple of defensive players in Patrick Chung and Dante Hightower that would have figured in well for them. The Patriots are still an interesting case because they're still probably going to be competitive regardless of things. The division, now with Jamal Adams out of the picture as well, that's another part of this with the Jets. The Dolphins they're probably going to struggle this year to put it all together just because they're just so new and they have so many new pieces. It is leaning heavily towards being the Bills' year in the division, but football's a weird sport. All you need is one random injury, or in the case of this year, one random positive test, and you could be screwed for a couple of weeks, or at least. So it all depends on how the randomness of the season, how things go, and but on paper they have a pretty good look at the thing.
Joe, I appreciate it. Thank you, and I will see you whenever we're actually allowed to be at the facility.
Bring your mask.
I will.